moepork here with another Omen guide. In this video, we'll be going over tips and strategies you can use to spice up your split gameplay. A lot of these videos will be theoretical situations demonstrated using an empty custom game, however most if not all of the concepts shown in this video have been used in my climb to Radiant. In my opinion, this is Omen's strongest map due to being able to use many options around his kit, ranging from strong one-ways, many teleport and ultimate options, and strong blind angles in many locations. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. The main smoke that most Omen players will use at the start of the round is the vent room smoke. Due to this smoke being very common, many players will not even play vents if they know you're smoking this location off repeatedly. Be wary of flash characters as they can still abuse the smoke to fly out of. While this role is usually handled by the Cypher or Viper player if you have one, Omen can also fill the role of the A site cross default. This smoke puts pressure on the A side of the map and makes it much more awkward to defend with one person. Omen does not have to be the player that lurks toward the A site, but can still supply smokes for the player filling that role. While Omen is the least valuable character to default towards the B site, it can be worth mentioning the options. Smoking the end of the hallway can allow you to put pressure on a sentinel player and give you different pathing options to keep your opponent guessing. Mixing teleports and blinds into the equation adds even more confusion. When smoking B heaven, it's a good idea not to smoke the cross due to not being able to see opponents push through the heaven smoke into rafters or hell.
Rafters, I think? Nice.
When executing the A site, smoking screens and heaven is a solid staple. Be sure not to place a smoke like this so that you don't give your opponent a bridge between screens and elbow. The main teleports to be using in mid are these three positions. Teleporting to the mid corner after smoking vents allows you to swing into B heaven with your team from both sides. Teleporting into the mailroom puts pressure on anyone trying to cheese in the mailroom corner, especially when combined with a blind. Teleporting into vents allows you to create pressure towards the A site and potentially pinch a player that might still be playing ramps with a teammate causing pressure from A main. All three of these teleports can be interchanged and keep the opponent guessing. Simply hearing the audio cue in mid will create pressure by default and either force your opponents to take more passive positions or hold rotations. Moving towards the A site, a strong teleport to use in conjunction with your team pushing up the ramp after you give the cue of smoking the cross or being smoked on the cross by your opponent. When smoking heaven in combination with the latter, you can go for a flank attempt against any A heaven players. Another good pressure spot is on top of the pillar in A main, which allows you to cross the gap without being seen by the ramp player. This also gives you some surprise angles against retakes on the A site, especially when A main is smoked off. For a fun gimmick you can use from time to time, smoking the cross on B site and teleporting into it allows you to close the distance to teleport again into hell and take the rope to flank anyone playing in B heaven. One of the main blind angles to abuse is from the market area into B heaven. This will flash anyone playing anywhere in B heaven except for the rafters on the B site. On the B site, this angle here will blind anyone playing behind the pillar on default site. When combined with a smoke for the cross, you can allow your team to enter on an execute or allow you to teleport without the B player hearing. Right off the start of the round, this blind angle entering into A ramp is powerful when combined with a jet rush to pick up an easy cheese kill. This angle leading into A site will blind players that play on the site as your team is pushing in, allowing your team to potentially gain more ground before contact. Using your ultimate into the back corner of the B site is a powerful pressure position due to instantly creating a crossfire with your teammates in B main. Be careful of cages coming out after the ultimate that will allow Cypher to push you during or after you reform. This spot at the bottom behind B heaven stairs is a great position, as most players will be barely out of the sound range and offer the fastest timing to aid your team as they are making a push into B heaven. When combined with a blind, your opponent will not only be unable to hear the ultimate, but because paranoia blocks out the minimap, they will be unable to know an ultimate even happened unless a teammate calls it out. Ulting into the screens area will instantly flank anyone playing close to A main without your opponent hearing or force them back into site immediately. If there's a player already playing A site, you are also safe from most pushes unless that player has mobility. Moving over to defense, the one way at the corner of A main is a solid staple, as your opponent will either have to use most of their utility to break through, leaving less to use against you when you fall back to site, or force them to smoke the cross and shift their attention towards A ramp and heaven. You can abuse this one way on ramp if your opponent is smoking the cross. You can ask a teammate to watch the cross and call out when an enemy smokes it. Be careful of jet rushes in this position, as there is a threat when holding out utility in preparation. Omen has many teleports to abuse in and around the A side of the map. Playing a passive angle for information allows you to show yourself falling back into the screens area, and then teleport into elbow out of sound range of your opponent, which will usually catch players off guard. You can abuse positions like this pocket and the gap across, as well as many vertical off angles and the gaps between backside, module, and elbow. When playing ramps, you can also assist teammates in mid with a powerful blind angle that covers most of the path leading into B heaven if you have a teammate that abuses it well. Generally, you can ask your teammate to call for the blind when needed for optimal timing. When forced into the A site, you have many powerful blind angles to abuse as your opponent is pushing onto the site. You also have the option of using this lurk smoke in situations that do not go according to plan that allow for even more options to stall with.
What the fuck am I doing?
When retaking the A site, using your smokes towards A main is a solid staple, as well as in between the pillar and the module if you have extra. This smoke causes players to often play towards the right side of the module, which can be wallbanged, creating a situation where that player has a long distance to return to true cover. Using a blind into elbow will allow you and your teammates to enter into elbow or cross the gap. While more on the selfish side, this blind covers players that play behind the pillar, which have the highest chance of seeing you teleport above if you decide to make that play. Moving over to the mid area, this smoke that lands in the middle next to the double box is a solid staple. Be careful of gaps on the edges. Another strong smoke is the heaven one way. When trying to reapply the smoke, it's a good idea to hang the smoke on the corner afterwards, since it's very easy to miss the original without being able to see the precise placement points. For a more aggressive hold, you can hang a one-way on the market choke, which allows your events player to push out relatively safely. Be sure to use this one-way from B heaven, as it has better timing due to shorter travel distance. Much like a jet player, you can go for an op pick by pushing out a vent, and then use the steel box to allow yourself to teleport safely into B heaven. You also have a powerful blind angle to abuse when playing from vents once your B heaven player makes contact. Defending on the B site is relatively difficult due to the limited options in comparison to the rest of the map. The biggest threat to pushes coming out of B main is the powerful blind angle into the B main choke that can be thrown from default site or behind the bulletin board. Omen can play an off angle on top of the double box outside of the choke, as well as use it as a teleport position from the default site. Other than smoking the B main choke, smoking the gap between default site and the bulletin board is a great lurk smoke to use in order to stall opponents pushing onto site. When retaking B site, smoking the cross can allow players to get into hell. Smoking behind the pillar can split opponents between there and back of site. This angle blinds anyone playing behind pillar and those cheesing behind the steel box. You can also blind back site after splitting opponents off using the pillar smoke. Using your ultimate into B main as your opponents are pushing into the B site is a solid staple. Using directly in line of sight is an option, as your opponent will usually be out of sound range if you time the ult well, allowing you to output pressure as soon as possible. You can also use your ultimate on top of the double box while the opponent is still attempting to push out. Usually the noise levels will mask the sound of the teleport, or cause enough pressure to give enough of a distraction to allow a teammate to snag a kill. That about wraps up this guide. Hope this spices up your split gameplay. If this video helped, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that stuff. Join the Discord, post memes, pork pictures, clips, and VODs if you want some coaching. Links in the description below. Once again, this is moepork. Thanks for watching, stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you next time.
Good shit.